You see all the time on the internet where people say, I just had to tell my truth. My truth. In the hell exactly is my truth? Because last I checked, there's only two things. The truth and shit that ain't the truth. Now, it's one thing about your interpretation, your perspective, and the story, how you see it. But my truth? When we were younger, this me and my brother, I asked my father, who at the time we were living with him because he had kidnapped us. That's a whole different story. But I asked him what really led to the demise of my parents' marriage. I was a curious teenager. And he got to telling me his truth. And it was amazing how his truth sounded like the entire fault for the demise of their marriage was on my mother. She was lazy, she didn't really want nothing out of life, this and that. And I listened. And not because I knew my mother's truth, but there were certain things that I knew about their relationship that, funny enough, he completely left out of his story in his truth. So when I asked my mother a couple years later, she didn't really go into it. And she's like, well, you already know plenty. And mind you, when my parents went through this nasty, ugly, drop down, divorce, I was probably, I want to say like 5th, 6th grade. So whatever age that is. So not old enough to understand everything, but old enough to have seen a lot and understood quite a bit. So much later in life, I started asking for context. And it wasn't until I was well into adulthood, maybe I even had my own children, when I asked my mom and she finally broke and told her truth. She said she didn't want to tell it because she didn't want to disparage my dad on her behalf. Like, I knew how she felt. I saw firsthand a lot of what he did and what was said. And part of the reason was because a lot of what he did, some of it, and what he said to her, he said, did to me as well. He was extremely abusive. But it's interesting because that was never part of his truth. There's a saying that is attributed to the Buddha that says 3 things cannot long be hidden: the sun, the moon, and the truth. So is your truth the truth? Hello, Governor. This is Rakai Steve, new from the Ville. I'm here to talk to you about Invincible, Season 3, Episode 6. All I can say is I'm sorry. Now, for those of you that know, I'm not going to do a long recap. I'm going to make this very short, and then we're going to go into my quotes and the media therapy deep dive. If you really want to see more on this, go into the description and click on the link where it says episode this analysis is based on, and you can see the full reaction with Centel and myself and our discussion afterwards. In this, we get a little bit of context, and we see a guy whose entire family is taken from him. They're in a building that is destroyed by Mark and Nolan when they're fighting, maybe in season 1. When Nolan is beating the hell out of Mark, they destroy a lot of property, and that a lot of people were killed. And even during the episode, they have a memorial where 2,900, something like that, almost 3,000 people were killed, a part of the aftermath, the destruction that was caused by Omni-Man and Invincible. This guy is going to everyone, trying to complain, trying to get Mark brought up on charges. And they don't want to bring Mark up on charges because they're like, he's a hero. And he's like, how can he be a hero? And he killed almost 3,000 people. What kind of hero is that? And no one will listen. So he ends up getting a job at the GDA. And then he ends up stealing some experimental stuff to turn himself into a superhero, because if he can't get justice, he'll get vengeance. And he wants to take down Mark himself. He starts working with his wife and his own child, and he has been stuck, and I do mean stuck, on vengeance for a long time now. So at the day of the memorial, where they're honoring all these people who died, Mark and Adam Eve attend, and this dude, who now calls himself Powerplex, he absorbs like kinetic energy. He absorbs energy and they can expel it. Kind of like how Vibranium does in Black Panther. He shows up to the memorial, goes crazy because it's on TV, and calls out Mark. Adam Eve tells Mark not to get involved. And she's fighting this dude and she thinks she takes him down or whatever. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. The problem is when they're taking the dude to jail, he gets loose and he goes ham. And him and Mark get into it. He is telling Mark why he's so upset with him, and Mark is trying hard to grow. He's trying to evolve, and he feels guilty. He feels shame for what happened, but he's always, it's not my fault. And you know what? It's not his fault, but it is his fault. 3,000 people died because of a hero. And Powerplex is on one, and he doesn't want to listen. He doesn't want to hear his apology. Like I said, he's not there for justice. He's there for vengeance. And he even goes so far as to take his own wife and daughter and make them look like hostages. And in trying to flex all his power and take Mark down, he incinerates his own wife and infant son. And still, after all of this, it's not his fault. It's Mark's fault. You know that I love my quotes, and I only have two. The first one is attributed to Mark Twain. And he said, "A lie can travel halfway around the earth while the truth is still putting on his shoes." The second quote, I don't know who said this one, but it is, "A lie is still a lie even if everyone believes it. And the truth is still the truth even if no one believes it." When you say your truth, what do you mean by truth? It sounds like a subjective experience or belief. So when we say your truth, you do mean your truth. The thing is, your truth might not align with reality or the actual truth. Your perspective can be flawed because maybe you're working on a lack of information. Maybe you're working on a natural bias. Maybe you refuse to acknowledge what the actual truth is. And one of the biggest problems with many people like that, like I told in the story in the beginning, is even though we have firsthand witness accounts to my father's atrocities in his marriage to my mother, he bore zero responsibility. He didn't acknowledge that he did anything wrong. And even if you try to call him out on something, he shifted blame. He justified his actions, whatever they were. Verbally abusive, he got a reason. Physically abusive, he got a reason. Adultery, he had a reason. Now, for anyone who's even half-assed sane and rational, this shit sounds crazy. Do you hear yourself? Huh? Do you hear what you're saying? That's what's frustrating about people who tell their truth. We get on the internet all the time and people tell their truth and you got some other clown over on the side. Yes, you better tell your truth. Boy, if you don't shut the hell up. Because what does that mean? That just means you tell your lie and you look for people to co-sign you and back you, because that's what's most important these days. Social acceptance. The more people you get to co-sign your madness, then it's got to be the truth, because Beyonce's internet said it was the truth, right? Sometimes if I get the story out first, I get it out the loudest, then that's got to be the real story. I've told y'all several times, history is his story. Now that might change now in the year that we're in, but history was always written by the victors, the winners, and it was usually always written by men. So the minorities, the women, the blacks, the handicapped, anyone who had a piece of that story, who had a real truth, no, it's not the story that we want to come out. We'll go so far as we'll change the textbooks. There's no such thing as slaves. They were workers and they earned valuable skills. That shit sounds crazy. It's one of the biggest problems with America. You know, and I'm sure that every country has it, every culture has it, that you have atrocities that you don't want to name. How can you heal from that? As an American culture, how can we move ahead? We have a huge ash statue in New York City. It was given to us because people saw the plight of the common person. And America was supposed to stand for something better. Give me your tired, huddled masses. The feet of Lady Liberty is covered in chains. It's two types of truth, subjective and objective. Now, subjective refers to what you believe or you perceive to be true based on your own experiences, opinions, and perspectives. And even me sitting here right now, this could be considered my subjective truth because it's based on my experiences, it's based on my perspective, it's based on my opinions. How much of what I'm saying is factual? I am not a therapist. You know, I took a couple of psych classes. That does not mean I am qualified to, make judgments about your life. And I'm not trying to make judgments about your life. Yes, I am a minister. I've taken training and been a minister at my church. And I love my church and love the training that I got to be a minister. But that's not for me to be out here and start preaching to you. I'm not preaching. I know a lot of people were like, well, why you cuss so much? I don't know. I'm a military brat and I was raised in the military and I've heard cussing all my life. And as you can notice, I do say a few words. I probably say sugar, honey, iced tea more than most of them. Shit. But most of the other ones, you don't hear me say those. I don't say the F word. I don't say, send be up. I don't say that. I actually, in my everyday vernacular, I don't try to use the N word. I have used it, when I'm around people. And now my older children are teenagers, so they're like parrots, and it's a problem. And part of it is, you reap what you sow, and that is my direct influence. Me talking all out of pocket. So my kids talk all out of pocket and they don't see anything wrong with them. And yes, I discipline them and say stuff to them, but they still be talking out of pocket. And I'll be like, hey, and they'll be like, my bad. Fake asses. Yes, that's my fault. I created those monsters. I love them. They my monsters. They're good kids, and probably the only problem is that their mouth bad. They get that honest though. They daddy cuss too much, and their mama got a smart mouth. Smart mouth. Anyway. Objective truth is facts and realities that exist independently of anyone's beliefs or opinions. The truth is the truth. This is a fact. It can be verified. There are receipts. Regardless of how you think about it, you know, your own opinion behind what happened is what happened. This thing is a thing because it can be independently verified, and it doesn't matter what you think, what you feel. This episode was really good and heartbreaking at the same time because Powerplex absolutely had a point. It just, his point was so lost in his rhetoric, in his vengeance, in his own delusion. And it's one of those, the saying is you can't see the forest for the trees. And I know I've heard people like, well, what the hell does that even mean? You can't see the truth if it's staring you in the face. And unfortunately, the name of this episode is perfect. It was called, all I can say is, I'm sorry. And we'll find a lot of times that I'm sorry doesn't cut it. I'm single. However, if I had a wife, or let's rewind back to happier days, when I was happily married, my kids, if some person, some being, was responsible, directly responsible for the death of my family, I would probably be inconsolable. I would probably want justice, maybe, I don't know. And I think most of us are fortunate that we have not been put in those type of situations to ask ourselves those questions. What would I want, justice or vengeance? And a lot of times we gamble, we take the chance with justice because we want to see the court systems work. But unfortunately for too many of us, the court system doesn't work. There's too many hands in there, there's too many biases, there's too many people that are worried about getting the win instead of justice. They're worried about putting more black men in jail because they have their own biases. I'm not worried about finding the truth. It's too much like work. And the thing is, the truth is still gonna be the truth. I don't know how I'd act if something happened to my family. I knew I could look the person directly in the face that's responsible for it. So in the case of Powerplex and Mark was responsible. He had this fight with his father that leveled cities, destroyed buildings, and people in those buildings were hurt, were killed. Now, he was trying to stop his father from taking over the planet. And we've had other threats to the planet that he's been directly responsible for stopping. He's the hero. But isn't that a problem we have in America, that we don't hold the good guy accountable? It's baked into our culture. We watch movies where the good guy, John McClane, Tango and Cash, you name it, any good guy, Sylvester Stallone, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Wesley Snipes, Jason Statham, they kill the shit out of people. They kill a whole lot of people. It's barely an inconvenience. And we applaud. Yes. we'll leave the movie theater complaining, oh, he only killed 173 people, that's it? This movie is trash. I expected him to kill at least 400. 400? We have the same problem in real life. We have people that are supposed to protect us, we call them police, that abuse the law because they put on the badge and they abuse it. Does that mean all police are bad? No, they're not a monolith. However, the problem is we have far too many who are bad and it's not cleaned up by the good ones. That blue line, they cover each other even when they know they're wrong. You can go to damn near any police department and the police themselves can tell you who the corrupt police are. But they're one of us, so they get a pass. Now, is that because the good ones are scared of the bad ones? Much like the hood? Because the hood does the same shit. They know who all the criminals are, they know who all the drug dealers are, and they don't say a damn word. The police come in there and be like, we just need you to tell us, who was it? And they be like, shh. You know, but in the hood, snitches can get some stitches, but they'll probably end up in ditches. They don't say shit. And that's because they're afraid. So are the good cops, the other ones with badges and guns and all that, they afraid of the bad cops? I don't know. I don't have an answer. All I know is that that's probably a term that needs to come out of our vocabulary. My truth. Your truth. It's just a conveniently wrapped lie. This is Rakai Steed, new from the Ville. Make sure that you like this. Share it as much as possible. Leave me some comments. You ever had to deal with your truth or someone else's truth? That even in the face of facts, they couldn't see it, wouldn't see it? And if for some reason you haven't subscribed yet, hit the button, subscribe to this, watch some of the old videos. Whatever I do, whatever I watch, I always use this, but it's mostly important to use this as well.